Okay, we're talking about changing our perspective in order to apprehend his joy. So joy is the evidence of a changed perspective. So the effort that I put in to get the evidence, the effort I put in is the effort to adjust my perspective. Hageomai, the Greek word for consider, it's used in Hebrews, consider him who endured such opposition. He says, lead your thoughts to a different perspective about Jesus. In James chapter 1, verse 2, when he says, consider hageomai, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, he's saying, lead your thoughts to a different perspective about your trials. So we're talking about that today. How do I change my perspective, especially whenever it comes to pruning? You know, when God's going to prune your life, I can't imagine pruning being pleasant, right? And yet, whenever someone does pruning, if you got a gardener that comes to your house and prunes up your bushes, your trees, what is he doing? He's grooming them. He's grooming them, grooming or training the tree to grow a certain way. You cut off one part, all of a sudden now it's going to change the way it grows. That's the very same thing he says about us. Whenever God's doing pruning in your life, he's grooming your life for greater purpose. One of the most quoted little verses in the Bible is Romans 8:28. A lot of people know this little verse. In fact, it can be the thing that just completely alters and changes a person's perspective about how they live. I saw I'm trying to think of the movie star, literally said that verse is, Steph Curry. Ha! Yeah, there you go. Not a movie star, a basketball star. Steph Curry said this little verse, his grandma would recite it, his mom, and it changed his life. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. And we know, he's saying my perspective has changed. We know that in all things, yeah, in pruning, in loss, in trials, God is at work. That's an altered perspective. But you've got to lead yourself to a different perspective. Instead of saying, my circumstances are terrible and they must mean that God's not around. That's not a God-centered perspective. Instead, lead yourself to a perspective that says, we live in a broken world where stuff happens, and my God will work in everything, all stuff, even the bad stuff, to bring about good things. And so therefore, whenever there's things that are going on in my life, I lose a friendship, I lose a loved one, I lose a job, I lose an opportunity. Whenever something's been pruned from my life, that loss God will use for my gain. That loss, whenever I have pruning, God is grooming me for his purposes. He's doing something inside of me to move me from a self-centered perspective to a God and other perspective. How might God be using your losses today as a way to develop you for gain in who you are, his purposes, accomplishing God's good deeds? Whatever you've lost, whatever it is, what if God is pruning you to be grooming you to be more focused on what matters most? Where might he be pruning you today? Lord Jesus, help us to see pruning from the perspective of the gardener who is grooming us for his purposes. We ask you, change our perspective a little more today to align with yours. I will see you tomorrow.